someone was inquiring about, them transitioning, going back and forth between playing pad and actual arcade stick. They were talking about how hard it was for them to like, do both, to the point to somebody gave him pad to play. He's used to playing on stick. And somebody gave him a pad and he was just like within 3 matches, I was like, I just can't do this, man. Like how do y'all just easily transition between pad and stick? So so the question arises like, is it easier for you guys, or how easy was it for you guys to go back and forth between stick and pad? Like, was it difficult for you? Did it really take a lot of training? Was it really seamless for you at first? Is it something that you really try to stay away from because you can really only like do one? So how was that transition for you guys, like playing stick and pad? Starting with you, Mr. Gaming Lift.
Um, I don't think it's that bad. When I first got an arcade stick, I want to say it probably took me, I want to say maybe 3 months or so to like get comfortable with it, like to not feel awkward, to feel like I wasn't putting too much brain power in trying to hold the controller and remember where the buttons were. Um, and it's not out of my experience, it's not too bad at all. Like switching back and forth, I did in a lot of occasions. Because there were certain games that I played only on pad and certain games I played only on sticks. Like Marvel 3 was a game I played exclusively on stick until I got on PS4, and PS4 no longer at that time supported legacy support for the controllers, so I couldn't use my 360 arcade stick with my what was the thing called, the converter. I forgot the brand of the converter, but it was like the really popular converters. Um,
Or Brooks?
yeah, Brooks, yeah, the Brooks converter. So I had to learn Marvel 3 on PS4 on pad, and it that felt awkward because I was just so used to playing that game. I wasn't really used to playing like really fast paced games on controller like that. Um, in terms of like Marvel and things of that nature. But I got used to it in like little short of a time. Like I use D pad for the most part, and sometimes I kind of like switch between analog sticks. So and that didn't really take long at all. Just like a little bit of practice and like going into actual matches and stuff, and just getting that muscle memory down. Yeah, it wasn't too bad at all. I just think just stick with it. It's with anything, just stick with it. Because actually, once you learn, like go from one and learn the other, it kind of gives you more of an insight on like how to do certain things. And I know it may sound like it may not make sense. Like how can learning a pad, you know, make me understand doing inputs easier on the stick? It does. It's weird. At least for me, it does. Like it kind of gives you more of an insight on how to do inputs because you might figure out a slight nuance to how you did it on one piece of hardware as opposed to the other that might have you like, okay, so that's how that kind of gives me a little more vision on how to look at the input. So it's not that bad. Like I said, it took me like 3 months probably, I would say, to learn to stick, maybe like an extra month or two to like really just like not even notice that I'm playing on stick, and then going back to pad, I mean, I played pad my whole entire life, so I've never learned to like or never lost that. So it's like almost like riding a bike. Like if I learn the hitbox now, I'm still gonna know how to use a stick and a controller. So um, just takes time. Just gotta stick with it. Keep practicing and just stay dedicated to it. That's all I have to say.
Um, like the thing is, like, I agree with that. You definitely have to stay dedicated. One thing, my boy Tempest told me when I was like, I didn't know, I never learned stick, but what I did was, I transitioned from a pad to a hitbox, and one of the things that my buddy Tempest told me when I was learning how to play was that you can't, when you get frustrated playing hitbox, you can't just run back to pad. Like that's one of the things that you shouldn't be doing because it's going to stunt your growth because you're just gonna be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, I'm just gonna start playing on pad again. I'd be 100%. I did not switch almost at all during the time I switched to play like other games, but in terms of fighting games, I pretty much exclusively played on hitbox, like after I was making the hit, I got frustrated. There were plenty of times where I was just like, oh man, I'm not doing the inputs right. I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this right. I had to like, I really had to put thought into where my fingers were on the buttons and everything like that. It was a completely different experience because I'd never used arcade stick like straight up before, or anything like that. I just kind of was like, all right, let me use a hitbox. And I'd never used that before either. I tried it for like 10 minutes at DreamHack Dallas, I think 2019, but that was it, man. So, over like what was it, like, let's say Dev's probably right around like 2 to 3 months, of just constantly using using the hitbox, I got used to it eventually. And then, it's less about you focusing on where your fingers are, how you're pressing the buttons, and now it's you translating your thoughts into the character on the screen. Like it's you're kind of removing it's in learning the control scheme that you're using. You're almost like it's almost like it's not there anymore, and you're just like transferring your thoughts on to the screen now. And then afterwards, I feel like after you become well acquainted with whatever control scheme you're trying to play, be it hitbox, arcade stick, whatever, then I think you're more likely to be able to seamlessly switch between one and the other, because then you're not you don't have to like Devin was saying, I'm the same way. Like I've been playing on pad almost my entire life. Like I've used pad for so many years, using the what's called directional pad, and going back to directional pad, I don't feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? It's a little weird sometimes, but I don't feel, I'm like, okay, I got this. So, but if I have to switch back to hitbox, I'm like, okay, I know hitbox too, and the thing is, like, the most important thing is you got to give yourself the time to get acquainted with whatever control scheme you're using. You got to focus on that control scheme for a little bit, because it's new. You're new and you don't know the arcade stick doesn't know you. You don't know the arcade stick. You guys gotta get to know each other, spend some quality time, and really see what it's all about before you start switching back and forth. You gotta focus. You gotta focus on it for a bit, and it'll really pay off. It'll definitely pay off. So I think in terms of like switching, I think I don't know how everybody else does it, but that's how it worked out for me, where I had to focus on the new thing before I could go back to the old thing and not feel like my learning was disrupted with the other control scheme.